All right. Hello, crypto community. Jeff Kirdeikis here, coming to you in some phenomenally green times where Bitcoin has just taken a 45-day run up from $4,000 at the end of March all the way to $8,000 where it's sitting at today. So this run up has broken us out of the longest bear market in Bitcoin history. In February, we broke through the 411 days of bear market, and that was a record that was set previously between November 2013 and January 2015. So a lot of people not so happy about the bear market, but it's provided a lot of opportunity for us to weed out a lot of the projects that shouldn't be in the space, that can't hold a candle to be able to continually advance themselves. So this is a phenomenal thing. And so that's why I'm really excited for on today's show. We have a super special treat. We're talking with Sean Gardner, who's birthed the project Emanate in the depths of the bear market and has still managed to turn it into a massive upcoming success. So quick overview on my side of Emanate and why I'm excited about it is because it touches a couple aspects that are super close to my heart. The first being the ability for content creators, in this scenario, musicians, to be able to monetize their work effectively and to remove essentially needless middlemen. And the second being that it runs and operates foundationally as a decentralized autonomous organization. So that's enough from me. Sean, thanks for coming on to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks very much for having me, man. Yeah, it's super exciting seeing things kind of turn green again in the space. It hasn't been easy, you know, building and continuing to stay positive over the last year and a half or so. But yeah, things are really turning around now. And as you say, like it definitely has started to weed a lot of the scam projects out and a lot of the rubbish projects out of the space and, you know, shine light on those that are delivering products. And you know, I think that last run up that we had in 2017, 2018 was pretty much pure speculation in a lot of regards. But this time, over the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be about that early adoption and real products pushing out there. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to get Emanate out to your community and for bringing these questions forward as well.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I'm excited to dive into it. And just to kind of overview, you know, so the bear market affected a lot of projects. What was the impact on Emanate and what were the challenges that came in regards to being able to push out a successful project, you know, when fundraising is a little bit harder? What did you guys feel and notice?
Yeah, I mean, fundraising was definitely difficult. We were lucky enough to, you know, be able to raise enough to do what we needed to do to get us to this point. And, you know, we're just around the corner from launching our alpha platform now. And we've managed to get this far. I think what it did do is like forced us to focus on just building the product and not obsessing over going to a lot of conferences and just, you know, endlessly traveling around the globe trying to raise another couple of $100,000 here or there. So yeah, I think by the time we got to like midway through last year, we just went, you know what, let's just build this thing, and that's probably the best way forward. So yeah, we did that. You know, ultimately, I think a lot of ICOs from the start of last year are down like 95% from where they opened, and the Emanate token launched about 2 weeks ago. It is down a little bit on ICO price, but nowhere near that much. So we're pretty happy with where it's sort of floated, and it's holding its ground right now. And you know, I think people are riding that BTC wave. A lot of the EOS community are looking forward to the June announcements and probably riding their EOS for another couple of weeks as well.
Because Emanate is built on EOS.
It's built on EOS, and also the main exchanges that we're on now, it's got an EOS trading pair. So we do have other exchanges around the corner which will have ETH and BTC pairs. Be interesting to see what happens with those, and obviously when we launch the platform, I think that will make a big difference as well.
Perfect. Right on. So Emanate is a super robust platform, I guess you could say. And rather than just like kind of giving you the microphone for a 1 hour overview, I'd love to like break it down into little stages so that people can kind of like micro digest the content and the concept of Emanate and what it does and how it operates. So the first aspect that I see for Emanate is that it allows for the payment method to go in a different way to artists than traditional methods, say like Spotify. So can you highlight exactly how that works and what the main differentiator is between Emanate and traditional methods?
Well, I mean, right now artists get their revenue through from all sorts of different places, right? So if you're on Spotify, then yeah, you're getting, you know, you're getting payments through for your plays, but you're getting them paid about quarterly through Spotify. In terms of like other types of revenue that you get, it depends what collection agencies you're registered with around the world. And with those guys, you literally just get checks in the mail. Like, you know, it's not particularly clear what they're for. And I think that's pretty crazy for anyone to be getting paid in check form nowadays, let alone, you know, musicians in developed countries. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's the current state of play. Or you could be also getting an advance from a record label or a company like Cobalt, where you're actually getting paid up front before you produce an album, but then that's essentially a debt to them that needs to be repaid.
Yeah.
And then you end up kind of touring your ass off to support that album. And depending how well it does, you might only just end up paying back the advance and not having that much left in your pocket. So the way that Emanate changes it, really I think it's going to be most game changing for up and coming artists is they get paid as the audio is streamed. You know, it sounds crazily simple, right? But nobody's really done it yet. And EOS is fast enough for us to do that. So we actually make these transactions as the audio is being streamed, whether it's one person playing it or 100 people playing it. You know, initially when we launched the alpha platform, there's a Spotify type experience for listeners to come to and play music from the bands that they follow. But over time, like this platform is really just about audio being able to be streamed and consumed from one place, whether it's through an interface like a typical streaming provider, or whether it's into a game or a virtual reality experience or a cafe or whatever. It's just about knowing that if you put your music in this one place,
Yeah.
it's going to get played and you're going to get paid as it's consumed. So I think it's going to blow people's minds when they can see the numbers going up in their crypto wallet as their audio is being streamed. And you kind of get a taste of that in the demo at the moment that we've got out there, but it's pretty simple. So you know, the alpha platform adds on full artist profiles, proper sort of account creation and integration of the real token, of course. Yeah, and over time, it's really about enabling that technology underneath it to be integrated with all these different parts of the music industry.
Yeah, and it's if anyone hasn't checked out the demo yet, I highly suggest it. It is the coolest thing because you have the blockchain, like Block Explorer underneath, or I guess you could say like a Ropsten style Block Explorer. And every 2 seconds, 6 seconds, you're adding new tokens to that artist's account, so you can actually see. You not only are you listening, but you're actually paying that artist directly. So that is a super cool integration. We have a few questions from the community in regards to the payments. So this one's coming from Mayank, is his name. And his question is, how much does an artist get paid when someone listens to his song? And kind of where he's going with this is he says, for example, if a user is paying $10 for a monthly subscription, and that's a static number per user, but let's say one user listens to 100 songs or one user listens to 100,000 songs, how is that payment getting distributed, if you catch what I'm saying?
Yeah, so a really critical thing is that the payments aren't peer-to-peer payments. So if you're paying a monthly subscription fee, that fee is held in a pool. What we call it like a rewards pool. So the subscription fees that come in are converted into a cryptographic asset. That's the secondary token. That's not actually the Emanate token. It's a stable currency that just sits internally inside the Emanate ecosystem. So because all of that value goes into a pool and the artists get paid from the pool, it's not really relevant how much one person listens to versus another, because all that matters is how many seconds your track has been streamed, and you'll get paid according to those seconds. Now that exact amount will vary slightly depending on how much of a percentage of the daily plays you're getting and how many subscription fees are coming in.
Right.
But we are really confident that it will be multiple times more than other platforms, because everything's automated. So we're able to send 85 cents from every dollar is what we're targeting to send through to the artists. The other 15 cents goes through to the EMT token holders if they're active in the community. And the way that we're able to fund our development and continue to support the platform is because we're also significant token holders. So, you know, all of the money kind of goes to the right places instead of being clogged up paying, you know, overpaid senior board executives and all of the sorts of things that go along with traditional centralized businesses. So, yeah, there's 85 cents in the dollar is what we're targeting. The person that listens to more a month versus less a month, we're thinking of, it's just an idea at this stage, but we're thinking of telling people whether they basically are giving back to the community or taking from the community based on how much they pay and how much they listen. So if you're paying, $10 a month, but you're consuming way more than that, we might say like, hey, have you considered like paying $12 a month so that you're actually giving back to the community rather than taking more than your share? Or
Right.
would you like to, or what would you like to create a playlist or refer some friends? So yeah, we'll, create ways for people to give back that aren't just monetary. And we really want people to get rid of the idea that music should be free and embrace the idea that the artists are getting paid.
Yeah.
And when you know that the artist is getting paid for every second that you're listening to this music, it's kind of a cool feeling, knowing that it's a two-way transfer.
Definitely. And we're already so comfortable with music costing money. Everyone has a subscription to Spotify more or less out there, and we're not giving it to the artist, we're giving it to Spotify. And there's this overarching understanding that, yeah, the artists really aren't making that much at all. So if in theory the users from Spotify transition to the subscription model of Emanate, and it's just a one-to-one swap over, the artist would be getting paid exponentially more. But to kind of just touch on what you're saying there, it is a flux based on how many people are using the monthly subscription on how much artists are going to get paid out. So in theory, if there are only 10 subscribers to use an astronomically low number, then the artist would be getting paid a lower amount than if there were millions or potentially billions.
Yeah, except it's offset by the initial rewards pool that we have at launch, which is to actually allow artists, early adopters, to earn this EMT token, and they'll be encouraged to stake it in their account so they get more rewards in future. So that will help people to kind of come on in the early days while we're still building up our subscriber base. We can't really start charging listeners a subscription fee until there's a couple of 100,000 tracks on there. So
that's fair. Yeah.
It's one thing at a time, but the beauty of the token economy is that it will help us kind of bootstrap and get to that point.
Yeah. And so a question from Lemier in the group there. She asks, can artists all over the world use this, or is it limited to certain countries?
I think that the end game is for anyone to be able to use it. Initially, it might be slightly harder for people who have, strict crypto limitations in their country because, for the first few months, the value that you earn is going to be tradable for EMT tokens rather than being able to literally take cash out into your bank. Other countries, I guess, do have restrictions on how easily they can get crypto into their bank accounts. But people within those countries are still trading crypto. So I think like in the formative stages, it's there is a bit of a crypto element to it, but ultimately our mindset is one of mass adoption. When we launch the alpha platform within the next month, it's not, you don't have to enter any keys or connect MetaMask or even Scatter to get started. Like you just sign up with an email address and a password. Artists can do that as well. And when they want to actually take control of their funds, then they'll be asked to connect an EOS account so they can do that.
Right. That initial onboarding is totally frictionless. It's like, it feels like Web 2.0.
It needs to be, yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's the biggest hurdle for us to get into like mass adoption in the crypto space is we need these easy user interfaces. Otherwise people just get hung up. You look at platforms like Steam it potentially. And it's just like, you got to bang your head against the wall. You like people who've never heard of blockchain. Now they got 64 key passwords. They're waiting 2 weeks to get into their account. So I'm a huge advocate.
I still haven't been able to sign up for Steam. I've been trying for like a year. I can't wrap my head around it.
They're on to you.
I don't think anyone can anymore. Yeah.
Another in the same topic of the artist payment, something that I find really cool about Emanate is it's not just the songs themselves that you can monetize, but it's also like the loops or the samples. So let's say I'm a producer or a drummer and I create like a little loop or a sample. I can then kind of upload that onto Emanate and people can then reuse it and I get paid for that. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, what we call a smart collaboration is it doesn't really have any boundaries. So it literally just means that when a piece of audio is played, however many people are involved in the creation of it can get paid. So we've put an arbitrary limit on it of 50 people at the moment, which is kind of a complex smart collaboration.
Yeah, I think that's a good limit to start with.
Yeah. But when we launch the alpha, we can create some collaboration and people on remixes, or they want a band that wants to have their pay split 5 ways or whatever. And in terms of the like community body of loops and samples and things, we're not launching with that, but the framework is already there. It's something that'll come more towards beta.
Hmm.
Um, but that said, like people will be able to contact us, and if they've got some complex contracts that need to be coded into a smart collaboration, it's really easy for us to get that up and running for them.
Yeah. And so I guess
Yeah.
we kind of like segued into the second aspect, which is like you say, the collaborations there. And so
Mm.
a question that Gav had in regards to this is, in terms of smart collaborations, they can only be monetized on the Emanate platform, or what happens when someone listens to a song offline, or is it only streaming possible?
Um, I guess I touched on it before in that Emanate over time will be positioned as a place where audio can be consumed into all sorts of different channels. So,
Hmm.
putting it on Emanate might mean that it can be used on a YouTube clip, or that it can be pulled into a game or put into a VR experience.
Right.
Um, people, it's pretty difficult to download music from Emanate because it's hashed by bouncing off an IPFS server, and it's also then broken down into like a streaming audio file.
Hmm.
So it's not kind of like right click save as,
Right.
steal it and save it on your iPod. But of course, people can always record the audio out from anything if they want to. That's kind of the tough thing about digital music rights, is that there is always that ability to just record the signal.
Hmm.
So if somebody puts some stuff up on Emanate and somebody else decides to rip it off and stick it elsewhere to try and earn some money from it, then that definitely can still happen. We don't have a bulletproof solution for that. But there are two things that are really important, right? The first one is there will be a public record of the fact that you put these samples up on Emanate to monetize them, and that's where they originated. And you can't see them anywhere else on the internet before that space of time. So if you really
Hmm.
needed to, try and get some money out of someone, then you would have like public evidence rather of those files originating, rather than having to dig up something from your inbox that could have been tailored or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then I think the second thing that's really important is that the incentive to take that work and put it somewhere else isn't very high when you can put it on Emanate and get rewarded for it fairly.
Hmm.
Like if you put a remix pack up and I like took those parts and did my own remix and then tried to get 1 million plays on YouTube so I could make money from it, it's far less likely that I'm going to make any money from that than just putting it on Emanate in the first place and doing the right thing. So
Hmm.
I think for the first time ever, there's incentives for people to have the right behavior, rather than a sort of loose idea that they might be punished if they do the wrong thing.
Right.
And that's where we think that it can turn people's perception on its head around around creativity and around how tightly you need to hold on to your work. And at the end of the day, like if I'm producing, this might be a personal thing, but if I'm producing some beats and somebody wants to use them and they're just a hobbyist who's just learning their way around producing tracks, and they never really make much money from it,
Hmm.
personally, I don't really care too much if they do that. I only want to be rewarded if somebody uses my parts and actually makes a lot of money from it. I want my fair share. So
For sure.
we want people to think about their creativity in a new way.
Yeah.
And that, those sorts of things don't happen overnight. Like that is an actual mental shift for people to take. But quite often it's like a big technology disruption or a cultural change that triggers these sorts of like gradual changes in the ways that people approach their work. Very much the same way that most people, a lot of artists are happy just to release their work for free nowadays, just because they want people
Hmm.
to hear it.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things can change.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful to be able to have that, opportunity for people to, I guess you could say, feel the freedom to be creative and then let that just kind of flood into the ecosystem as it does, and still be open to the potential of earnings, but without, having to do all that paperwork and the expectations. I find it's just a really clean system you guys have set up. I do want to circle back quickly just to touch on the offline aspect, because I know a lot of people are curious about this. So on Emanate, let's say there's a mobile app or a mobile desktop app. Are you able to go on Emanate and listen to music offline, and then when you come back online, it's kind of pre-recorded your listening or transactions offline, so then it can append it to the blockchain and pay out the artist? How does that work?
Yeah, for our alpha, it's a little bit tricky because the payments are actually tied in with the streaming. So we don't initially have like a like Spotify sort of flick the switch and you can keep listening offline. It doesn't matter if you pay for it again because it's not a peer-to-peer payment. As I say, the artist is just being paid from that pool. But it does use your internet bandwidth, or if you've got if you are actually offline, like you're not connected, then you can't actually cache the files initially to keep playing. It's definitely something that we'll look like in that we'll look at in future. But I hope when we push that out, the community sort of remembers that this is just an alpha, and Spotify just raised what, $23 billion or something. So,
yeah, they have a little head start, and
we raised like half of that.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing
because
some of these ICOs, they raise 30-50 million dollars, and 2 years later they still only have their white paper. But you guys have gone a much cleaner route, where you done it through the bear market, and you already have an alpha to show. So I think that's phenomenal. And you're right, things take time, and I think first things first, online streaming, paying the artist, I think that's fantastic, and people can just get on that same page.
Yeah, I mean, those things will definitely come if it's what the community wants, and we're going to take feedback from the community, even as our and we're going to chat a little bit more about the DAO or the DAC sort of governance structure, but we will take feedback from the community about what to focus on next as we step through. And let's just think of the big picture, right? Like internet connectivity and 4G and broadband and everything is just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and faster and faster and faster. And 5G is coming soon, and when 5G comes, that's going to be a whole nother wave of innovation. We'll probably be able to play like super high definition audio over 5G from your phone, and maybe have video as well. So over the next 2 to 3 years, things are going to move very, very rapidly, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of the world is connected within the next 3 or 4 years. And probably in a lot of parts of the world, I think that data will actually become free, because if it's just so fast and so freely available, then there'll be a bit of a shift towards people paying for the content that's on there rather than the actual bandwidth itself.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have Elon Musk launching hundreds, if not thousands, of satellites in the next coming years, and I think the SpaceX plan for internet that they're releasing it was like over a terabyte of data was $9.99 per month. It's
exactly
crazy.
So when you look at a project like Emanate and a lot of the other things that are going on in the blockchain space, most of them are thinking a few years ahead, and you have to sort of go, okay, well, these guys are making a start now, but what's the world going to look like 2, 3, 5 years from now? And what are the other factors that will contribute to their success?
For sure. And, so we mentioned a little bit about, the DAO and just how the world is shifting into a different form of structure and technological advancement. And so this is the big third point that I want to touch on with Emanate is the governance structure. And so it's super novel and really new into the world, and is really starting to gain a lot of momentum. So a decentralized autonomous organization, for anyone who's listening, can you just kind of give a rough overview on what that entails and how it integrates into the Emanate ecosystem?
Yeah, I think decentralized governance is, I think it seems like it's a really big thing to us in the crypto space, but realistically, not very many people have wrapped their heads around this stuff just yet. For those who haven't really looked into it yet, it's, essentially moving the decision-making power away from a central body of people like you have in a typical company, and handing it over to the token holders. So that you can vote on the things that happen on the platform that you're involved in. For us doing a product for the music industry, those people that can have a say over what happens are the passionate listeners, the people that make playlists, the artists themselves, the labels. So it's an ideal use case for a decentralized governance structure. We're working with, I think most of your community are fairly new to EOS, but we're working with working with a group called EOS DAC, and they tend to call these things DACs rather than DAOs in the EOS world. But the DAC is like a decentralized autonomous community, or sometimes cooperative. And EOS DAC is an EOS block producer. They have been in the top 21 before, so sort of signing blocks on the mainnet. But the way that they're set up is that there's an EOS DAC token, and the EOS DAC token holders actually decide what that block producer is going to do. And I believe that they share in a dividend of what comes out of that block producer team as well. So the EOS DAC guys have started building toolkits for other projects to be able to, it's open source software that you can essentially take and customize and create your own decentralized governance system. And so we're one of the first projects that's actually used it. Our token dashboard, which is at dashboard.emanate.live, is actually a fork from the first EOS DAC toolkit. We removed most of the governance stuff and turned it into kind of a token sale portal for the first iteration. But what we're going to be doing over the next year or so is working out what that would look like for the music industry. So typically in the DAC, we talk about, like, on an EOS DAC, we talk about worker proposals and constitutions and all these different things that are pretty techy and kind of mean something to people in crypto, and mean something to people in the blockchain world. But we're going to change that, so it'll be something like the Emanate Music Cooperative, and instead of worker proposals, you'll just have like feature suggestions.
Right.
And instead of a constitution, you'll just sign the terms and conditions. So we'll try and make it a little bit more plain language for people it's going to be hard enough to wrap your head around how to kind of make the most out of this new world without having to get into too much lingo and terminology. But under the surface, it will be a DAO or a DAC. And yeah, we're looking at, all sorts of things being pushed through there, like actual track moderation, feature suggestions, rules around fees and revenue splits, and all of those sorts of things. So we will be starting to look for, instead of like DAC custodians, we're thinking of having like Emanate reps that can be voted in and out to sort of help run this thing. And we'll be starting to look for those people very soon as well.
Right. So just maybe to touch on it a little deeper, how exactly would somebody go about, becoming part of the decision-making process in the Emanate ecosystem? Is it based on proof of importance, proof of stake? How does someone accrue, I guess you could say, the power of vote or multiple votes?
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons for holding the EMT token. So, as an EMT token holder, you can stake your EMT. You will be able to vote on issues. If you want to be an Emanate rep, then you'll need to stake more EMT. Labels need to stake EMT if they want to be able to earn a percentage of revenue from other artists. Getting up and running on Emanate would be one of the easiest ways to kickstart a record label. If you're like a kid coming up out of school that had a few friends that were producers or whatever, it would really be one of the easiest ways to start building a following around a label brand. So all of those different roles need to stake EMT within the system. And as long as you're actively contributing to the community, you do get a share of rewards as well. So it's not like a passive dividend that you'll just automatically get because you're holding Emanate tokens. But the amount that you hold will contribute to the amount of rewards that you get, provided that you're active in the ecosystem. And we hope to have that all launched within about 6 months.
Yeah. And so you mentioned earlier that, 15% of the revenue generated like 15 cents on the dollar would go to EMT token holders. And so you just touched upon now that, okay, you need to have activity for this, to receive dividends, so which would constitute a utility token. But can you touch on how that, I'm just circling back a bit here, how that earlier 15%, which would be, I guess you could say, a passive dividend, how that still stays, I guess you could say, compliant in terms of security laws?
No, that is the 15%. So that 15% goes to the token holders who are active. There's no completely passive dividend within the Emanate ecosystem. So it's 15% of every dollar that comes in that goes out to the holders. The 85% goes out via the plays and via the smart collaborations to the rights holders and the people that contribute to creating the content. guess it's a line between content creators and people that are kind of working behind the scenes, moderating, creating playlists, voting on issues.
Mm-hmm.
Being active in the community might just mean that you constantly have active playlists on the go that you add to every month. Like, it could be that simple.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to do like a few jump around questions now that we've touched on the big three. You mentioned playlists. That's something that, if you're not a music producer or a music creator, that's one way that you can essentially monetize yourself as a listener on the Emanate
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem. Can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, I think like nowadays it's a pretty fine line between a kind of curator slash tastemaker, um, and like a DJ, because
Right.
almost anyone can kind of DJ nowadays with the equipment that's out there and the software that's out there. So yeah, if you're someone who creates a lot of playlists and constantly refers tracks to friends and follows a lot of artists, and you, I guess, referring to like SoundCloud, you comment on tracks or give people feedback, you're contributing to the community. You're an active contributor. But on, say, something like Spotify, you pay exactly the same money per month as the guy next to you that just passively listens to whatever's in his or her top 40, or whatever,
Yeah.
who's just consuming. So we want the people that give back to the community to get rewarded for what they do, and that's the sort of thing that will build a better network for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And the token plays a key role in aligning those incentives, and that's why I do believe pretty strongly in the utility token model that a lot of people were kind of writing off towards the end of last year. The token plays a really key role in bringing everyone together and creating a common goal, especially when you need to stake that token in order to play a part.
Yeah, it's like on your ecosystem, the more active you are, the more you're going to get rewarded, the more power you have in the vote. So it's very much an ecosystem that's kind of curated by the people who really care about it.
That's right. But if you're an artist who has to stake, say, 1,000 EMT in order to earn revenue for your tracks, are you really going to then just go and upload like fart sounds? Because you're,
Right.
completely degrading the value of the network by doing something like that, or uploading something that's, fascist or racist. And you're a holder of tokens. So are you really just going to go and degrade your own holding?
Hmm.
And in bad cases, maybe even risk losing them.
Right. Okay. So can you touch upon that a little bit, and how someone would go about losing tokens, and how is that governed?
I mean, the long-term vision that we have for Emanate is probably to have our own network, our own chain, not over the next couple of years, but in the long term. And when that happens, I think people that are like chronic uh, people that abuse the system, there's no reason why they couldn't be blacklisted.
Hmm.
When we're talking about people's careers and people's earnings and revenue, and there's bad actors within the system that are abusing it, then for a slightly more closed network like Emanate, I think that sort of thing is acceptable.
And I'd agree with you too. I feel like there's a lot of because it's a ideologies to go fully decentralized now that we've like blockchain has been birthed and everyone's just so excited about decentralization, but everything has to have a balance. Full centralization, full decentralization, full capitalism, full communism, neither work. And there needs to be this middle ground. So I agree. Like you say, if people are abusing
Yeah.
the system, there does need to be kind of, I guess you say, best practices that a decentralized, and a DAO or DAC in this instance agrees upon. So it's like everyone agrees on the rules, or there's a majority consensus, and then so we just can follow those rules. And I think that is the perfect balance to be struck for sure.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to like fundamentalism around immutability and censorship, then with something like Bitcoin, I think it needs to be censorship resistant and immutable. But EOS isn't a competitor to Bitcoin; it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And even with Ethereum, there wasn't much immutability or censorship possible. And look how many people lost millions and millions of dollars last year. I think Ethereum was awesome, and it obviously like powered along the cryptocurrency space, but it did enable a lot of criminals to steal people's money. So
Yeah.
we don't want that to happen on Emanate when they're putting their precious music out that they've been working their lifetime to craft their sound and write these songs. We don't
Mhm.
want people. We don't want people stealing their shit.
That's fair, yeah. And
Yeah.
so Emanate, you guys have your alpha coming out really soon.
Mhm.
You've teamed up with the EOS guys, obviously. What other partnerships do you have in the works right now?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like user adoption, our biggest partnership has been through Vamper. We connected with those guys so early to mid last year. They've got 500,000 artists on a social connection app. It works a bit like Tinder, where you swipe left or right, whether you want to work with someone or you think there might be a cool singer.
Right.
You connect with them, and you can go and make music together. But at the moment, they kind of go offline and make that music and maybe publish something in a traditional way. So by integrating Emanate, those artists will be able to just jump straight in and start publishing tracks together. So that's a big thing. We're just about to announce a partnership with OCI, which was a big, they were actually a contractor to Block One. And so we're about to start working with OCI on the long-term vision for Emanate. We've got some really big partnerships to announce off the back of the trip we just had to the US, which I can't mention just yet because they're not quite signed, but they will be. And I'll tell you straight away, Jeff, when
Yeah,
they get
right
across
on.
the line. Most of our partnerships are in the EOS space. Like we're aligned with a number of different block producers and wallets and different groups like that. So yeah, we've got some good partners that will play a critical role as we develop. But we're always open to talking with new people as well.
So, what would be your ideal 2-year outlook on Emanate?
Mm. Yeah, so the Alpha platform is about like giving people a taste of what the technology can do, showing people that real-time payments for audio consumption is possible, showcasing what can be done on EOS, getting people to understand smart collaborations, bringing artists in. We'll keep deploying new features to Alpha for up to 3 or 4 months after we launch it, and then we'll start focusing on the beta releases. The beta platform will probably start to integrate more of the things we touched upon, like samples and stems and so forth. And we'll start experimenting a little bit with actual studio integration. So if you hear a beat or an a cappella that you like on the Emanate platform, you can shortlist it. And then when you jump into an Ableton session and you're producing a track, it'll be right there in your Emanate folder, tagged, kind of ready to go. And then when you spit that track out, the smart collaboration is already ready to go with the right metadata and everything behind the scenes. So it can just be uploaded straight onto Emanate.
Wow. And so
So
that integrates directly with studios like Ableton.
that's the idea, yeah.
Wow.
And that's actually not like it sounds pretty far out there, but it's not that complex to get something like that happening.
Hmm.
We've already sort of scoped it out. It's just something that we're not delivering for alpha.
Right. And so just
Um,
to go a little technical on that, the way that you would, let's say I create a drum loop, I put it on Emanate, somebody pulls that drum loop, throws it on Ableton, the way that it's going to be able to be tracked to me is that, like you say, there's metadata that's baked in and is immutable and can't be changed.
Yeah, that's right. So it'll
Okay.
be you won't actually need to download it onto your computer and upload it into and drag it into Ableton. We'll have like a syncing sort of system going on behind the scenes, like kind of the equivalent of when you're running Dropbox on your computer, but also in the cloud. But
Mm-hmm.
instead of being in the cloud, all of these files will be on IPFS. So they're already hashed with a unique identifier that's unique to that track. IPFS can tell us like whether a piece of audio already exists based on that hash, and yeah, you start working with that in your studio environment. And
Mm-hmm.
if you export that music as part of your session, we can pre-create part of the smart collaboration before it's published back to Emanate.
Right. And so,
So
okay.
we'll be experimenting with that in beta. We'll probably do a native smartphone app for beta as well. And then towards the end of that kind of 2-year outlook that you asked about, we'll be looking at what the network actually needs in order to scale right up and be a true payment system for the global music industry. And we think that will probably evolve either our own chain that's like a fork of EOS, like a sister chain or a side chain possibly. But at least we want artists who are somewhat technical to be able to run like an Emanate IPFS node and
Mm-hmm.
contribute to the network from their studio, and then then they will be able to earn, more passive payment for supporting the network, as well as their own music. And there's something beautiful about art, like producers or even labels, like finishing their work, uploading it through their own node, which gets pinned into an IPFS network, and feeling like they still have ownership over their files, but they are available to the world, and that they'll get paid whenever they're used. So that's the kind of 3-year vision, and it's looking more and more achievable, especially with partners like OCI coming on board. And I write about this kind of stuff quite a bit on our Medium if anyone wants to dig a bit deeper.
Which I'd highly suggest checking out. Your guys' Medium is super well put together. The 8 Days of Emanate was a really good read, so definitely check that out on the Medium. Did you write that?
Yeah.
Oh, nice going. That was great.
It was brutal.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's arduous writing those things. Something we glanced over a few times. I guess we touched on, but IPFS I know is a term that not everyone is familiar with, and creating nodes is something that scares the shit out of a lot of people. Can you just maybe like do a quick touch on the benefits of IPFS versus what we currently are using in our data storage world, and what would it take to set up a node? What does that mean for someone who just has a MacBook Pro?
It's I mean, it depends on what the node does, right? But for IPFS, we're not actually hosting our files in IPFS for alpha, but what we do is when the file is uploaded, we get a hash of that file from IPFS, which actually hashes the binary of the file itself. So it is actually unique for every piece of audio that bounces off IPFS nodes. So that can kind of help us to identify unique versus pre-existing audio within the network. Streaming over IPFS is very, very possible, but it is pretty new, and we don't want to sacrifice user experience just for the sake of decentralization initially. But as it gets better and better, it's a logical way to go. And yeah, I think like tying that in with the support of the network itself, running a node would be just like installing a piece of software on your computer and having a certain amount of uptime, and getting rewarded for the work that it contributes to the network. I think like with some of the Ethereum wallets and different things that people have run in the past, they may or may not realize that they're kind of already running a node by having that sort of thing up and running on their computer. So it can be really light, or it can be really heavy. If you're running a full history node on EOS as a block producer, then that uses a massive amount of storage and computation, and costs a lot of money, especially if you're using it on like a supported cloud sort of server. But then there are all sorts of different blockchains that run super light nodes at the moment as well. So what that looks like exactly, we don't really know yet. We're testing out the EOS mainnet. Alpha will run on mainnet. Beta will probably run on mainnet as well. It's what comes after that will potentially be something a little bit more that may stand on its own a little bit more.
And so would the incentive to be, and let's say hosting a node, whether it's a light or a heavy version, is it going to be kind of like a Filecoin system where you're kind of like, it's like proof of storage, I believe is what it is? Or like, is ICI who's doing your guys' IPFS? Because I haven't heard of ICI before actually.
OCI, yeah, Object
OCI,
Computing.
Okay.
We're going to be talking to them about it and building the roadmap together to go into the detail of what we need. I haven't dug too deep into Filecoin myself, but essentially you would earn Emanate tokens to support the network, or potentially the secondary tokens. It wouldn't be bringing in another type of token and service.
I understand. Okay, well, that's something for me to check out, OCI then, because that's something I find really interesting, is if you can support the network and be compensated for it. I think it's DLive. They run IPFS. It's either DTube or DLive. I forget which one it is. But nobody wants to host the files because they're not getting paid for it. And so he's like, we run IPFS, but I'm still paying like $1,000 a month to the server fees. So I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think this is a good model that, what you're giving back to people who are supporting the network. And I think it's really in line with the Emanate vision of, okay, if you're contributing, you're going to be rewarded. So I think that's fantastic.
OCI are actually, that's not an IPFS solution. They're a software developer.
Oh, okay.
that we're going to be working with. And that'll be announced in the next 24 hours or so. So that's kind of fresh news just for you guys.
Right on. Nice.
Yeah.
What's just do like a high level overview. What do you guys have in terms of like competitors or obstacles that you're looking at right now? Like what is like so far we've highlighted a lot of like the highlights of Emanate. What are some of the things that are maybe a little bit of a struggle or that you're trying to work through?
Yeah, there are some competitors out there. I think we're really lucky to have landed on EOS, and we're a little bit ahead of some of those because of that. It's just such a great development platform. There's certainly some music projects that started way before us, but have kind of started to drop off a little bit off the radar. We've had some of our competitors kind of talking to us about joining forces as well, which is still a possibility.
Yeah.
I think that the main challenge really is going to be getting people to shift their focus towards the incumbent kind of centralized models, and having a think about why they would add an Emanate service on top of their Spotify, or if they're an artist, why they would jump across from SoundCloud paying $25 a month and not earning any money to paying $11 a month and getting paid for every single play. You know, but I think getting people to just rethink the current state of play is the main challenge.
For sure. And I think if you're offering, I think artists are going to be the easiest to onboard because it's a logical move for them. The users will be the challenge. I think you just got to hit them with a lower price point and like an easy to onboard user interface. Yeah, it's tough to move people. So I think one of the questions we actually had is, what is Emanate's marketing play here? Obviously, Spotify, SoundCloud, they just have such a massive stranglehold on the market. How are you guys? What's your marketing play?
For really, we're going after artists first, because
Yeah.
the things that we've created have immediate utility for artists. The smart collaboration framework and the real-time payments. We think that we'll be able to attract the sorts of artists that, they're not global superstars, but they have like a solid following.
Yeah.
They're willing to. They know that if they move platforms, their audience will follow them.
Yeah.
They want to do things in a different way. They're innovative. We think those people will start to come across. But having said that, like our connections are pretty deep in the electronic music industry, and we had some really big music managers in LA telling us, you know what, I would get all of my artists off both Spotify and SoundCloud as soon as there's a decent alternative, because they're frustrated with both of those platforms. So from an artist point of view, I think we focus on them first. We've got a really, really strong network of electronic music musicians around the world. And we plan to just kind of go niche by niche, finding influences in each genre and kind of tackling it that way, rather than trying to appeal to everybody all at once. And hopefully the fans will follow the artists along when they move across to Emanate. We plan on paying artists, a certain amount if a track just comes up in someone's feed, or if they've searched for it. But if a fan is actually following an artist, then we'll give them more payment per second. So, even if they get, say, 1.5 times the pay per second, then that's a real encouragement for artists to actually say, hey, check me out on Emanate. Make sure you follow me. You make sure you get my latest materials. And at the moment, artists they don't really know exactly where to point their fans to. Like, most of the time when there's a new track, it's like, hey, check me out on Spotify, SoundCloud, check out my website. I might be touring soon. It's like, there's no one place. So hopefully we can kind of help with that a little bit and give people a clear place to point their fans to.
For sure. And for where to point the fans of Emanate, if they wanted to find out more, where should they head to?
Just head to our website. At the moment, there's plenty of information there. And the whole thing relaunches when alpha launches. So emanate.live right now, it kind of just looks like a fairly typical sort of ICO site. But emanate.live a few weeks from now, we'll say, for the future of music, sign up, log in, log out. And it's more just like going to SoundCloud or something like that. So it's going to look less and less like a kind of crypto fundraising site and more like an actual product.
Right on. So, but people can sign up for the alpha right now if they were interested, correct?
They can. There's a website you can go to, which is intro.emanate.live. And we did airdrop 10 EMT tokens out to all EOS wallets probably about 6 weeks ago. And if you got those 10, then you can use them to sign up for an account, which will have 200 EMT in it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have 10 EMT, you can still buy 10 EMT and do the and go through the same process. So, that'll cost you less than $1 at the moment. But you'll get an alpha account that will give you unlimited listing for all of 2019. So that's intro.emanate.live.
And people can buy the tokens on intro, or where would people go to buy the tokens?
Tokens that are on Nudex, Chains, WhaleX. Last night they got put up on a new instant sort of token swap site called YOLO Swap, which was put out by the guys from Kyber Network. That's a really easy way to grab some tokens as well. So yeah, and then we're hitting Hotbit in a couple of weeks. Bancor soon. We'll be on EOS Finex when that launches, which is a new EOS DEX that Bitfinex are putting out. So there's heaps of places to buy the tokens. When Alpha launches, we'll reopen a way to buy them directly from us as well.
Perfect. And so outside of Emanate, what are, or I guess you could say like the revamping of the music industry, what are some big trends, or just one big trend that you're really excited about in cryptocurrency right now?
Oh man, I'm a little bit kind of slightly blinkers on in terms of what we're doing. It's quite hard to keep up with the whole space when you've got your own project. I mean, I'm not a big gamer myself, but I am quite excited about the kind of non-fungible token elements of in-game objects and things like that. I can imagine like, if you're playing a game and you're as a player, you would advance quite far through it and you had a particular sword or something that was really, really valuable. If that actually became worth like thousands of dollars as an in-game object, and someone could battle you and take that off you and have the token to prove it.
Right. Like racing for pink slips online.
I think that would be pretty next level. I'm interested in all of the kind of privacy related projects as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's another really cool Australian project called Loki, which is a privacy focused blockchain for messaging and dApps. There's a new privacy token that's just come out on EOS called PEOS, which has done really well. I'm excited about everything that's happening on EOS. Looking forward to seeing what gets announced in June by Block One.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any speculations on what that's going to be?
They're all out there. I think if you hit up the Everything EOS podcast, you can get some pretty in-depth speculations from them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not gonna go into it.
That's fair. All right, Sean. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a super treat to find out a little bit more about Emanate, and have an awesome rest of your day.
No worries, man. Anytime. Thanks, Jeff.
See ya.